Welcome back to Electrolysis Unplugged and After Hours Chat. I'm Joanie.
And I'm Stephanie.
This week we have a special Q&A episode with a group from Australia, and we're so excited for this conversation because these are the kinds of questions that come up in real treatment rooms all the time.
Absolutely. These questions touch on different things like client discouragement, treatment timelines, hair growth cycles, follicle anatomy, thermolysis, and one of the trickiest types of hair, peach fuzz.
We also want to give a special welcome and thank you to Kelly Dermody from Dermaskin Training. She's an electrology trainer in the Sydney area, and Kelly helped bring this group together, and we're so grateful for the opportunity to connect with electrologists internationally. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good evening, Joanie and Steph, and thank you so much for having me and allowing me to represent the Australian electrologist team. We have so many questions for you. So many of the students are listening to your podcast all the time. As you know, education doesn't stop in the classroom, but continues very much afterwards. So we really appreciate your time in answering our questions. So yes, my name is Kelly, and I'm the founder and principal of Dermaskin Academy here in Sydney. We offer accredited and unaccredited training and booming at the moment down here with electrolysis. So each week we're just inundated with new people wanting to upskill, refresh their skills, or actually learn the skill of electrolysis. So we're very passionate about elevating electrolysis education in Australia. And again, thank you so much for taking this time now to answer our questions.
Absolutely. It's always exciting to have these broader conversations because even though we may practice in different countries, the questions are often very similar.
Exactly. Clients everywhere want to know why electrolysis takes time, why they're still seeing hair after several appointments, why practitioners want to see, I'm going to redo that one. And clients anywhere want to know why electrolysis takes time, why they're seeing hair after several appointments, and practitioners want to better understand what we're targeting inside the follicle.
Yeah, exactly. I think the second one, it gets a little bit more technical. We're aiming, as it just went and pulled me. She says, I'm going to do this again. And then here I go having to do it again. It put me on 3 pages later. All right. So talking about this, redone. So the second one is more technical. When we start talking about we're aiming for the bulge and thermolysis, the hair stage really matter. And the third one's very practical. Peach fuzz. What can electrologists, like newer, older electrologists, do when they're struggling with like tiny, fine, shallow hairs?
And this is exactly the kind of discussion we love because it blends science, technique, client communication, and real-world practice.
Mm-hmm. So we're going in with question one. Question one, client discouragement, hair growth cycles and timelines.
Many clients the question is this. So many clients have become disheartened during weekly electrolysis visits because they feel they aren't seeing results fast enough. Can you explain the hair growth cycle, anagen, catagen, telogen, how it affects treatment timelines? Specifically, does it typically take around 3 months to treat every hair once through a full cycle? And how should we be setting client expectations around this from the start?
Ooh, such an important question because client discouragement is real. A client may be showing up every week and investing time and money and still seeing hair, and they're incredibly discouraged. When I was a new electrologist, one of the big things that I had instilled in me was to act. We act in the right cycle of growth, anagen, catagen, telogen. And that conversation, I think, set me up in a certain space as well, like as a new electrologist, understanding that there was like a science behind what we were doing.
And if we're not explained the process clearly, the clients can kind of assume that every hair they see is the same hair that came back. I think there's a lot of that you can get from seeing the pattern of when clients start to maybe like ask these questions, like, why is this coming back? Or if they're just giving up, disappearing off your schedule. Does it happen, in the first 6 weeks to 2 months? Does it happen 5 months in? That can kind of give you a lot of indication as to maybe what's going wrong here in your explanation.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, in reality, like, many of those hairs, they may be different hairs from when we first kicked off, right? They were not visible, they weren't there, they weren't present for the first treatment. So they weren't treatable at that time. And that is something that clients often forget, that it's cyclical.
Exactly. I think that's one of the most important things that we teach in the consultation. The hair that the client sees today is not the entire hair population in that area. It's only what's visible around that moment.
Oh, that moment in time. That phrase is very helpful. Visible and available need to be in the forefront of your consult.
Yes, electrolysis requires a visible hair. As far as I know, maybe that robot will change things in the future, but right now we got to be able to see what we're working on. So that's our visual guide for the insertion. If the hair's not present, we can't treat the follicle during that appointment.
Yeah. So when new hairs appear after the treatment, it doesn't actually mean like treatment failed in any way whatsoever.
Nope. It just means that different hairs are cycling in.
So like thinking about that, like explaining the hair growth cycle tends to be something that I think that is a struggle for clients to maybe take in when they first research us. But like, let's break down the hair growth cycle in a really client-friendly way.
So 3 main stages, we know: anagen, catagen, telogen. We know that the anagen phase is the active growing phase. The follicle is actively producing the hair. The lower part of the follicle is also developed, and the hair is still connected to the active growth processes. So mainly we're talking about that dermal papilla, the vessels, and all of that.
Yeah. And then and anagen is generally considered to be the most favorable stage of treatment. Um, eh, with the anagen cycle, a lot of times clients will think that like what they're seeing, like, once you say anagen, is all anagen, because like it's growing in their mind.
Yeah.
And you have to start to break that up in their brain.
Yeah, just because the aerial part of the hair is visible doesn't mean that the hair is an anagen. And can I
What?
say, and I know that you know this.
I
'Cause-
like that term, by the way. Aerial part of the hair, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh my, I so dig that. That's great. I like that.
You got me off my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm easily distracted. So what I was going to say, so yesterday I actually did my lecture on the hair growth cycles and implication on treatment planning. And so it's funny that these questions are tying into that so perfectly. But one thing that I have in there is I'm talking about the anagen, that theory of like anagen only, right? And I remember putting that lecture together and how much I wanted to disprove it.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, in clinic, we know that we can treat hairs in all stages.
Absolutely.
But we also know that at least if you do your treatment planning, like I think you and I both do, which is more consistent, you get done faster. So there's something there, right?
There's something there to like targeting a hair during its life versus during its rest, I would say. Because like what's present in its life is what we are trying to take out. And it's not that there's not components of that present kind of throughout the process of a hair cycle, but like the volume at which is present, I think is a big part. And it's also like when she said the 3 primary area, anagen, catagen, telogen, like I think that's important to note, like estrogen-based hairs and that kind of stuff is like we have follicles that are inactive,
Yes,
and haven't arrived for any performance whatsoever. So
they're just sleeping.
They're just sleeping. Exactly.
And, so, I mean, we talk about the anagen phase and having that availability of that dermal papilla being so important because we know that when we get into catagen, that's a transitional phase. So at this point, I mean, the growth slows down, the follicle regresses, and the relationship between the hair and that lower follicle, that dermal papilla, starts to change.
Yeah. And like in that change, I always say like the catagen phase is the reason that they don't study it like they did the anagen and telogen was it's kind of like, since it's a transitional phase, it's kind of like a throwaway timeline. I know it sounds silly, but it's like a shift in a matter of a couple weeks of a greater cycle. And so like our main focus is usually between anagen and telogen as it is catagen. We're usually not targeting in our minds, a catagen hair, because it's such a quick transition. But when we start talking about the telogen in its resting stage, that's when we start talking about like the inactivity again.
And, that usually means that the hair is no longer actively growing at all. Again, you could still see the aerial part of that hair dangling outside the follicle, but it doesn't mean that there's much activity going on below. The follicle, the hair sits in the follicle. That was also called a club hair in a lot of the older textbooks. So if you're reading, the Hinkle books and I forget some of the other ones that
like Grior's text had it in
Yes.
there.
So they'll talk about the club hair quite a bit. The hair just kind of chills there until it eventually sheds, and then the follicle can prepare and cycle for a new hair.
Yeah. And I think for clients, it's important to note that we don't need to turn this into like a full anatomy lecture, because if you're an electrologist and you're a couple hours into your studies of anatomy and physiology, right? For you to say that you don't understand it, think about a 15-minute consult and the glaze that's going to happen in that space. Because I feel like the minute we turn this into anatomy lecture, and I was queen of A&P at 17 years old in these moments, giving everybody like all the things I knew. And so often nothing was
They don't want to
staying.
know. They
don't care.
want to know.
They're like, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it going to die? That's what I want to know.
But is it to die?
Yeah, I try to keep it simple. I do like using analogies that kind of just relate to things that people are familiar with. I think that everybody can understand that living things have life cycles. So things are born and growing, they get old, and then they die, right? And so a hair is no different.
No.
Another simple explanation could be that, hair doesn't all grow at the same time. Some hairs are actively growing, some are resting, some are shedding. Some are not visible yet. And because of that, we treat the hairs as they appear over time. Another analogy that I like to use to kind of talk about the cyclical nature of the hair cycle was that if everything was synced up, then we would all have long, luscious, beautiful hair 1 minute, and then we would just be bald the next. So
maybe it's Maybelline, maybe it's anagen.
Yeah. All anagen at the same time, full head of hair, and then boom, nothing left.
For me, and you guys know, I try to utilize like a softer approach to like a more not comedic approach, but like not intentionally comedic. I don't mean to be intentionally comedic. I just sometimes say something and people laugh a lot, and I'm like, oopsie. But like when I thought about like the Chewbacca reference, like everybody knows I love that little hairy alien more than life itself. Okay, Chewbacca is like my go-to alien. But I would say, like, if you were to think about your hair in a cycle, you would look like Chewbacca. Like, if it all cycled in at once, it would be very hairy. And then it would just kind of chill. And that's your catagen resting. And then it would all shut out and you would look like Gandhi. Like, just this naked, very less full, too. Because if you think about it, your hair takes up volume. And so that fullness would go down if everything shut out at once. And so it helps them understand, like, there is a reason for the cycles of growth. And one of them is to, one, not look like we have a hair problem. And then the other two, to like cover your body, to make it feel like the elements aren't as harsh on your skin, because they are less harsh in that space.
There's also another reason why we talk about hair growth cycles is so that they can understand what we're treating today and then what could possibly become visible over the next sessions. And that's really important to make sure that we get that across. And so I would also kind of add something like, when you see new hair after treatment, don't automatically assume that it means that the hairs that were treated before came back. Right? So many of those times, those hairs were not visible in the previous treatment.
Yes. And I just had that conversation today, because like clients will still like ask, like, why am I still seeing this hair?
Yeah.
And I was doing an insurance reevaluation. And so here in the States, when you do insurance, like for healthcare and for hair removal, in my state, if they're prior approved or wanting to get prior approval to get it covered where there's no money out of pocket kind of thing, there is like a different assessments that we have to do, and reevals are part of it. So like how we have a consultation typically in our heads, we're like, oh, we did consult when we first met them and we never have to have a consult again. Reavals is honestly a completely different. Every 3 months, I have to basically account for what I'm doing, right?
Yes.
And so a client asked me, like, they're like, I haven't been in a month, and I wasn't really paying attention, but I'm noticing more hairs coming in on my arms, but it was away for a long time. And I'm like, that I haven't been in months is the reason for the hairs that you see. It's not that you have more hair. It's that you waited to have the hairs that were present and the next ones and the next ones were moved, and now it's time again, right? And they're like, oh, okay, perfect. But because of that understanding and because of those early foundations there, it's those reminders, because while I had a great consultation originally with her, those things pass, right? And time passes and we forget
You
those things.
yeah.
And like, it's okay to be, well, one, I like to be checked by my clients. I want them to be like, hey, are we still on plan? Are we on target? Like, do I need to do anything different? Because it means that you're checked in for that investment you've done. But I also, it means that I'm checked in there. So like, when clients say I'm still seeing hair, it's like those ones that are on like a weekly regiment. And like they're still expecting like the same exact volume in that space. They start to think that they're not going to see hair because we get them to that point of what we call control. Like when you read the staircase chapter and the Beyond Electrolysis Basics, like we talk about control in that space. What Joanie is saying is like, we are getting them to a point where we're just managing reoccurring or renewed growth or new growth in that space.
Yeah, and you have the area under control, so it doesn't get out of control, which is what you don't want.
Exactly.
Can I just say that we saw that a lot with laser. So clients that were stopping their series of treatments, and let's say they were going very consistently, like places here we have like Laser Away, where they people are just going almost every month for laser sessions, and they're on maintenance for the rest of their lives, right? And they're coming in and they're saying, oh, I don't have a lot of hair, right? Because they're getting laser done every single month. But then the minute that they stop, it looks good for like a month. But then all of a sudden you're getting into month 2 post laser, month 3 post last laser session. And then there's more and more and more and more hair. So it was like, and we saw this a lot with, especially with gender affirming care when we're doing surgical prep and they've done a year's worth of laser. And then we have to wait to see what cycles are still coming in post laser. And that takes time, right? We know how long a hair growth cycle is, how long things stay dormant. So it takes months before you're really seeing how much is really left.
This episode is sponsored by Aesthetic Systems, distributor of advanced laser and electrolysis equipment. With a focus on technology, training, and client support, Aesthetic Systems partners with professionals to deliver safe and effective permanent hair removal solutions. Explore their offerings at aestheticsystems.com.
So there is, okay, you guys are going to hate me for this, and I'm not saying that I enjoyed this business model because I am not saying that at all. There is a business model that happens in these spaces that is meant for maintenance alone. And that is what is happening to these patients, because effective hair killing does not do a 4-week turnaround, even in laser or electrolysis. And so what that is it's a retention thing.
Yeah.
And so and so when people go like, why is that happening? When patients ask me that, I'm like, well, because you were planned by a business model and not a treatment plan. And that is a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. Because as somebody that like does do both, it's frustrating for me when I have someone come in and I know that I could have delivered an epic laser treatment initially, and they have been given that. And I now know that they have been essentially pushed into only electrolysis because of the model that they had been given by those businesses. And like American Laser, I don't know if you remember them, but like here, Kelly, in the States, what we would end up having is you'd go to any restaurant and American Laser would have a little clear box on the card, and you drop your card or contact in and you'd get a free laser. Okay. That was like the big thing. And the model burnt them out and they went out of business. And it was like, that was something that we saw a lot in the early 2000s. And that is when I realized it was a business model in my early days. Cause like, why do you have so many free treatments? Like, you should have dead hair by now. So that's when we start talking about that, it's one of those ones where I'm like, oh, it makes me so angry, because it's like those weekly appointments, those clients have been given paradoxical hypertrichosis because of a business model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're under treating, or you're just kind of, you're really just putting a Band-Aid on a boo-boo, and it's not really healing it.
Absolutely.
But, it just kind of goes to show, I mean, when we're talking about seeing the hair come back in, you have to give it time to grow in to see what's really left. It's, early progress doesn't mean no hair. It just means that the area clears faster, that density starts to reduce, that hairs start to appear finer. The same appointment time covers a larger area, right? We used to only to be able to do the chin. Now I can start moving to your upper lip. Or it used to take me an hour to clear your chin, and now it takes me 45 minutes, 30 minutes, right? So that's what progress looks like. It doesn't mean that from here, this week to next week, you're going to be bald forever, because that's not how it works. But we're looking for progress in different ways.
Yeah. And I think in this moment, it's like where we teach clients how to measure that progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you might say, like, in the beginning, you'll see new hairs appearing because we're working through different hair growth cycles. That's that clearing stage. Over time, we're looking for the area to become easier to clear. So during control, especially, the density will reduce. The time that we need to maintain area will also decrease.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I think from there, it's like, does it take 3 months, to treat all the hairs at once? That's like when things, like the clients will get like this little stick in their brain in that moment, because that 3-month question is a component there. So when we talk about like your hair growth cycle, does it typically take around 3 months to treat every hair at once? Great question. How do we address that?
It's an oversimplification, because the staircase model, I put the clearing as a 3-month mark. I mean, you just kind of have sometimes to oversimplify. Does that mean that is the only true time frame, and that's, it never takes less time, it never takes more time? No, but you kind of have to come up with these models, you kind of have to come up with these averages, and then that's what you stick to. So
Absolutely.
we have to be careful. I think, don't tell a client in 3 months I'll have treated everything once. It's not an absolute. It's just an average.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to hold up, because I know that when this is on the podcast, it's different, because if you guys go on to my socials, you'll be able to see comments about this. But this is a poster that we use here at the office, and it basically goes through. And I have this in every one of our lectures. If you go into our treatment planning lectures and that kind of stuff, we use it a lot in there. That diagram, while it's pretty in that one, I made it pretty. It was on like an Excel spreadsheet when Richards and Maherg did the original. Not as cute to put on the wall, right? But it is an opportunity for you to show a client that those cycles range on the body. And that's like a baseline in that space. That's not even talking about like those hormonal ones and that kind of stuff, but at least gives them an understanding of what 3 months might shift on a body part to a different timeline. And so we have to be very transparent with them and let them know that as well. Like you said that 3 months will have everything cleared at once. It depends on that area. It depends on the density, the hormones, the medications, the previous removal, the consistency, the financial availability to come in for service, right? They all kind of line up into that.
Exactly. I mean, someone who's been tweezing, waxing, threading over years may have very irregular growth patterns. So hair might not be present neatly and predictably.
Yeah. So 3 months, it's a checkpoint. Okay. Use it to check in, but not to promise dead.
Yeah. So you could say something like in about 8 to 12 weeks is often a helpful reassessment point. So by then we usually have a better sense of your growth pattern, how quickly new hairs are appearing, how your skin is tolerating treatment, whether your schedule is appropriate. But that doesn't mean that every follicle that's appeared has been completed.
Yeah. Yeah. It brings up the idea of clearance versus completion. What does that look like? Because there is a difference there between the two.
Yeah, clearance usually means that we treated every visible hair that day. So this is what I can do in an appointment. Completion means that the follicle population has been treated effectively over time to the point where the client no longer needs regular treatment for that area.
Yeah. And those are definitely not the same thing. It's no, like a client, they have to have a they still have to have a full clearance, right? And still need to do ongoing treatment because new hairs will continue to come in there and present themselves from a follicles that were not visible at that first clearance. Or if it's far enough down past that, like as you're in that control space, it might be back for return growth, but remind them of what a healthy timeline looks like for that area of the body that has been studied.
So when we say clearance, we need to make sure that the client is not hearing finished, right? So there's a big difference between treating what's available that day and treating what exists on the
Yeah,
area.
absolutely. Absolutely. So for myself, like I start to think of like, how should we set those expectations from the beginning?
So we need to explain the process before the client becomes discouraged. Say something like electrolysis is permanent hair removal, but it's a progressive process. We treat individual hair follicles as they become visible and available. Because hair grows in cycles, you will continue to see new hairs appear in the beginning. Usually I kind of throw a joke in there and just tell them that we're going to be best friends because we're going to see them all the time in the beginning.
Absolutely.
That does not mean that the treatment is failing, right? They have to understand that how cycles work and that what's coming next week and 2 weeks from now and 3 weeks and 4 weeks from now are different hairs. It means that we're working through the hair population in stages.
The hair population, I love that. Like honestly, it's honesty without being discouraging. And people are already coming in discouraged because they have a hair problem that they don't like to begin with, right? I personally want to go into explaining like maybe my first goal in that space. So I would say like our first goal is to clear the area and then maintain those clearances consistently. And then from there, I would say once again, then we keep up with the new hairs as they appear. And then most clients will start to see patterns shift in there. It helps to explain like what we're encountering, what we're going to be doing, and why scheduling actually matters in the first place.
And it's really important to think about like planning our appointments smartly. If appointments are too far apart and it's not long enough to handle the growth, then it's kind of like, I use the analogy like you're chasing your own tail. But essentially, clients are going to feel like you're never getting ahead of it. And that can be really demotivating. So you got to be smart in how you do your treatment planning too, and how long you book for this client and how you're going to address getting through the area of concern.
Clients with a few scattered hairs and a client with a dense chin and neck growth, like cannot be scheduled the exact same way in the exact same timeline. I remember when I was a young electrologist, I would have uncertainty, feeling like I was trying to upsell. That's what it felt like, upselling to book their next appointment. But like, then if you think about it, like I was afraid to give them their treatment plan. That's wild when you start thinking about that. I want them to understand that like there is a goal that we are set out for, which is permanent hair removal. And that happens because of a scheduled, expected timeline based off of my expertise as an electrologist.
I knew an electrologist back in the day that would only book 15-minute appointments, no matter the case. And to me, I think that it was for money because you know how the 15-minute session is usually our highest ticket price.
Business model.
Yeah, exactly. And so to me, it's partly, I think, unethical and unfortunately, I think that the clients are not getting the treatments that they could. It's going to stretch their treatment plans because, again, you're just chasing your own tail. You're never really going to clear an area unless really the area only takes you 15 minutes. But for most cases, that's not the case.
Yeah. And the thing is like, how do you start tracking progress when like you don't have there's no track to follow? Like at that point, you're not doing anything.
We have things like the stair step model. The staircase model helps because that gives you what your checkpoints should look like. That's every step down is a checkpoint. And so at those checkpoints, what I would say is documentation, photos with consent, treatment notes. If you don't take photos, tracking how long it takes to clear an area. Even saying last month we needed a full 60 minutes to clear this area. Today only needed 45. That can help clients see that they're progressing. And I think that's huge.
Yes, that is huge because you're on point 100%. In the chat, Michaela and Robin both said, Michaela says, and those 15-minute clients, they're going for years. And they're the ones that, well, they might be happy clients because they might be like, oh, I only have to spend this. It's like their nail appointment. And I'm like, girl, this is not a nail appointment. Like we have something to do here,
There should
right?
be an end. Yeah.
I love it.
I
Like,
wish there was an end for nails. That'd be great. We just do them.
right?
That's it.
Yeah, one time, and I'm like, look at how pretty. But like, that's just not it. And they go and tell their friends. Oh, I've been going to electrolysis for years. I absolutely love it. And you're like, years on what area? Like,
Yeah.
because that makes my gut just drop when I hear that.
Anytime a client's like, I've been Joanie's client for years. I'm like, tell them it was a lot of areas.
Please give the whole picture.
Expand. It was a tension, I swear.
Like all of a sudden, like,
Yeah.
well, Joanie and Stephanie just suck. Like, oh
yeah,
gosh,
exactly.
yeah, no. And then Robin says, I only offer 15-minute add-ons, which I will say that if you're in my schedule now, we are not doing less than 15 minutes unless it is the end. Because the start, stop. I will, unless you come into me with just incidental hairs, I will let them know it will be more financially beneficial for you if I see you for 30 minutes and go after the ones that are possible changes in the future, problematic ones, than for us to keep that going for a long time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. So clients forget why they started, and that it sucks, but they do forget why they started, especially when they stop seeing the problem.
They do. I mean, when you're focused on the hairs that remain, you might not notice what was there before, how the density is actually reduced.
Yeah. It reminds me of like when you're going through like a weight loss journey and you're like going to the gym and like everybody's like, oh my God, what's different? And you're like, I don't know, I've been eating like asparagus and grilled chicken for like 4 months now. And you're like, I just feel like crud. And you might look substantially different, but you can't feel it because you're in the middle of it. Right. And it's not until like you go back and you find that picture and you're like, oh, look at me, chicken and asparagus.
Yeah.
Maybe I can have butter again. Like in that moment, it's a thing. And so we forget why we get started, and we forget why, how bad it was. So, okay. What about clients who ask about tweezing and waxing, right? So like without judgment.
Well, I don't know. I judge a little there. I'm sorry, but it's probably just internal. But if they have tweezed or waxed, we're not here to judge.
Yeah.
We just need to know because it changes how the hair actually presents itself when we're doing our treatment planning.
Agreed. For me, it's like electrolysis is not for everyone. And that's important to note. It's not that electrolysis doesn't work for everyone, but not everybody works for electrolysis in the sense of like, they might not be committed. And so if I have somebody constantly tweezing in between sessions, I will say, until we get this maintenance, like until you're ready for me, I can't do this because you're basically paying me for nothing in those moments. The one where you talk about the trash can.
Yeah, I do. I used to have a little trash can next to my consultation desk, and I would just pick it up physically. And I'd be like, you're taking your money and you're throwing it in the trash. That's what you're doing.
Just what I thought. Trash.
That got the visual enough. But it's true. I had a client, I don't remember who it was. Some electrologist was said, only tweeze the hairs you want to keep. I'm like,
I did.
One.
Yeah.
That was you? Okay.
Yeah, well, that is actually
it goes in my head.
It is. That is, somebody said that to me. I think it was my mom, or Mike Bono, like, where it was like a conversation we were having. It's like, only tweeze the one you want to keep. And I was like, got it. Like, on it.
Yeah.
It is because they're going to show up like the mafia to a few, like they're going to make your life bad. So, okay. So let's talk about, our next question. So the first question, like it really comes down to communication, right? Expectation setting, helping the client understand that new hair does not always mean failed treatment.
Yes. And 3 months is better used as a reassessment point. It's not a promise of completion. No. So be careful there.
Yeah. And the second question takes us deeper into treatment theory.
I mean, and I think that it challenges something that electrologists often discuss. If we're treating the bulge area in thermolysis, does the hair growth stage still matter?
So thinking about thermolysis, the bulge and hair stages, okay? Lay it on me.
So if we aim for the bulge in thermolysis treatment, does the hair stage still matter? Be it anagen or telogen. As the hair moves up and the closing shaft behind it, does the bulge stay above the hair, always allowing for some destruction, even in telogen?
I love this technical question.
And I think that it definitely needs a nuanced answer. So short answer is yes. Hair stage still matters, but that doesn't mean that telogen hairs can never be affected.
Yeah, and we got to avoid both extremes. Like we're not saying like always this and always that. It's too simple to say that only anagen matters, but it also is too simple to say that stage doesn't matter if you're targeting the bulge. So, what is the bulge?
The bulge
Let's
is
go.
a region of the follicle that's associated with regenerative cells. It's commonly described around the outer root sheath near the area where the erector pili muscle actually attaches to the follicle itself.
Yeah, so it's not just like a random point inside the follicle.
No, it's actually pretty important, but we have to be careful not to reduce permanent hair removal to only one tiny target.
Absolutely, because the matrix, the bulb, and the dermal papilla all matter together.
Exactly. I mean, the matrix produces the hair shaft. The
Mhm.
dermal papilla plays a role in signaling and support, and the bulge contributes to the regenerative material. So permanent hair removal is about disabling the follicle's ability to regenerate the hair, not just aiming from one imagined dot.
And that's like honestly, when you start thinking about why stage still matters, if the bulge is important, what are we trying to focus on here?
Well, it's because the follicle changes throughout the growth cycle, like we talked about earlier. So in anagen, the follicle is active, it's deeper, and it's more developed. The bulb is formed, and the hair is being produced, and the structures are more complete.
Yeah, so anagen generally gives us like a more favorable target.
That's right. I mean, in catagen, the follicle starts to regress. In telogen, the lower follicle is not the same as it was during anagen at all. So the hair may sit differently, the pathway may feel different, and the follicle is not presenting the same treatment environment at all.
Yeah, so even if like with the bulge region exists, every stage isn't equal in that space, and the presence of the bulge does not make every hair stage identical, like from a treatment standpoint. So when we start thinking about this, can telogen hairs still be affected?
I mean, potentially, yes. And I think that in clinic, I mean, in practice, we see
Mhm.
that, yes, you can do damage in all stages of hair growth.
Yeah, the anecdotal evidence is strong.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
maybe it's not in the literature, but we've seen it in practice. And so
Mm.
a telogen hair is not automatically untreatable just because it's a dead hair. If the insertion's accurate, the energy affects enough of the relevant tissue, then there can still be destruction.
Yeah, it's possible. It's not the same as predictable in that space. When we treat visible hairs in different stages, like in real practice, like we have to start understanding we're not stopping to classify every single hair, deciding whether or not it is like good to treat or not, right? But our understanding of growth stages help us understand why repeated treatment over time is very necessary.
You know where this becomes relevant is because there's still electrologists that will recommend that clients wax before coming in for treatment.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes into the thinking that only anagen phase is going to be the phase that you want to treat. It can also kind of relate into the type of modality maybe that you're opting to use, like using galvanic or blend over a thermolysis, for example,
Yeah.
which definitely favors anagen hair more than other stages. But that being said, I think that you can cause damage in all stages.
So there was another good question that we had here, which was whether the bulge stays above the hair as it moves up.
I would refine that language. I would not describe the bulge as simply sitting above the hair because it can create the wrong mental picture.
Mhm. Um, Robin says that back in the day, waxing was so protocol.
Mhm.
Like, for me,
Well, back in the day, you're talking about a certain type of, technique was the cream of the crop and everybody was doing blend and, so it was kind of on par with it
Mhm.
fits, I guess.
Yeah, and like when I think about it, like when it's protocol like that, I also think about back in the day in Robin's generation of early electrolysis. You didn't have laser at your fingertips. And so when you think about it, like if somebody came in with a massive back clearance, right? We're talking shoulders to belt line, from lat to lat. Okay. Every last follicle was active. Okay. Or seemingly active. Chewbacca. This is Chewy, right? So I would say that the only person I would not necessarily encourage waxing, but if they were like, I can't deal with this hair until we get to that, like it's driving me crazy, I would say everything above this region, you may wax in that area if you need a massive clearance, or like I can't hear where I'm at, you could shave it down, right? It's considered barbering here if I shave someone's back, which is the funniest thing ever. I'm like, no, but there is a thing to it that made sense. Now I would put somebody into thermolysis flash or laser hair removal. That's like, if you're going to ask me what I'm going to clear out first, it's going to be there. So like, okay, so bulge moving up, right? And we start to like, let's refine this language, right?
So, I mean, the bulge is the region of the follicle wall itself. So the hair shaft is within the follicular canal. The follicle is dynamic, so it definitely will kind of retract and deepen depending on the stage of hair growth. It's not like a static tube, essentially. So it might not present the exact same target at every stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think specifically in like the thermolysis space is where we have to start to really talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, thermolysis uses high frequency current to create heat in the follicle. So the goal is to create enough controlled heat injury to disable the follicle's ability to produce another hair.
Yeah. And placement's going to matter there. Your depth of insertion, angles of insertion, it's going to matter.
Yeah, it matters a lot. Timing, intensity, insertion. If it's not accurate, the energy is not being delivered where it should be.
You know what it makes me consider? Because like your follicle is always there. So a lot of times when electrologists start off in school, they can, and patients do the same thing. They think follicle and hair are the same word. Okay. So like they'll say hair follicle, right? Right. But follicle and hair, like a strand of hair is not the follicle. I like to tell people like, and if you guys want to have a little bit of fun later, go to your local grocery store, get a thing of water balloons to play this game. Okay. I want you to think of a hair follicle like a water balloon that has a very like drip system spigot. Okay. The balloon is always there, but it expands and contracts when volume is present. Okay. And that driplet of that water reminds me of the stem cells activation in that space to expand to what its necessity is going to be at. So when people ask me like, does it go with it? It's, well, your follicle goes with the hair. It's how you get a hair out of a follicle is movement in that space. So I think that it's really important to focus in there. When I say I'm aiming for the bulge, it doesn't mean that I'm automatically like that. I mean the treatment is effective, right? What my goal is there is that we still need to consider the insertion angle, the depth, the follicle distortion. We need to consider probe size, skin hydration, timing, current intensity, tissue response. All of that still is very important in this component because I have to think about where that balloon's coming up and down. And we cannot compensate for uncertainty by over treating, especially if that balloon has not refilled with its next lifed hair.
Coming soon to 2026, the AES Spring Summoner, plus more virtual CEUs to keep you inspired, educated, and connected. Brought to you by Joanie Gonella and Stephanie Shields of the Electrology Education Coalition. Stay tuned and get all the updates at electrologycoalition.com.
Exactly. I mean, our goal is not to create the largest injury possible. The goal is controlled tissue destruction inside the follicle while protecting the surrounding skin.
Just because I love the way you do some of your little like practitioner moments, can we give like a concise practitioner facing answer here?
Yeah, I mean, in thermolysis, for example, the bulge is an important regenerative target, but hair stage still matters. In anagen, the follicle is active and structurally developed, and which generally gives us a more favorable target. In telogen, the follicle has changed. The hair may sit differently. The treatment path may be less predictable. A telogen hair may still be affected if treatment reaches the appropriate areas, but we really shouldn't assume that telogen treatment is, always equivalent to anagen treatment simply because the bulge exists still.
Yeah, I love it. It keeps us from being too rigid and too oversimplified.
Exactly. Stage matters, like we know insertion matters, energy matters, moisture matters, follicle size matters, skin response matters, client's history matters, practitioner skill matters. That's why what we do is so complicated, really.
We're so complicated, Joanie. So I think this brings us perfectly kind of into the next question. And I think this is like question 3, if I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Yep.
So next question, because technique becomes even more important when we're treating very fine hair.
Yes, peach fuzz can be deceptively difficult. It looks delicate, but from a treatment standpoint, it can be pretty challenging.
Oh, yeah. So when I start thinking about that, the thing that pops into my head is treating peach fuzz. I know that you and I have a thing for peach fuzz because we're like, ooh, like little cleaner
It can be
fish.
satisfying, yeah, once
It
you figure
is.
it out.
But
The third question asks specifically, treating peach fuzz is a major challenge. Do you have any evident advice or tricks for electrologists, whether it's insertion angles, lighting, probe size, depth, or anything else?
oh yeah, and I love this question because fine, like vellus or fine intermediate accelerated vellus hair can be done like it can be one of the more, I would say, frustrating things that like an electrologist, especially electrologists that might not have proper tools and that kind of stuff, can encounter. Electrologists often assume that coarse hair is harder because it looks more obvious. But in my opinion, like fine hair can be even more technically difficult because it's shallow, it's delicate, it's hard to see, and it's easy to overtreat. And the follicle opening may be even harder to identify once it gets smaller like that.
Exactly. I mean, with peach fuzz, the biggest challenges are visibility, accuracy, shallow depth, and protecting that skin.
Yeah. So let's start with lighting. Lighting is the biggest one.
Yeah, lighting is huge. With fine hair, you need strong adjustable lighting and good magnification. So sometimes the hair almost disappears unless the light hits it just from that perfect angle.
Absolutely. In fact, I know that you and I both use a headlight and on our loops. Headlights are one of those ones I kind of like for peach fuzz. I kind of like,
Oh yeah, get out of here.
get out.
And it becomes the Batman signal, just goes right up to the ceiling.
It does. Unless I put the little yellow filter over the top and then I'm like, okay, it's decent, but then I got to dim it and I'm still using indirect lighting because let's talk about this. Like that fixed lighting position, I love, and we have them here at the school. They're like a gooseneck light. So you basically can kind of like from the gooseneck, you can turn it into whatever direction and start moving it around because it is like a fixed light position. Think of driving in a car and the sun catching your hair. That is the one way that you're driving, but
You've
you're
got to
only
move that light. You have to move that light. You have to change the angle. When we're working on peach fuzz, it's about side lighting. So, or oblique lighting, if that makes more sense. Create a contrast where the hair reflects. So sometimes the hair becomes more visible when the light just kind of skims right across the skin instead of shining straight down.
Yeah. And this technique is often like indirect or shadowing is like what we refer to it online a lot. It's just a practical tip that electrologists can use immediately without having to buy extra things going forward.
Yes. And I also want electrologists to slow down, position the client properly. If the practitioner's twisting their own body or working from a poor angle, fine hair insertions can become a lot harder. And side note, if you're not using loops, you might actually need two lights, your mag lamp, let's say, and then a second light so that you can do your oblique lighting, your shadowing.
Yes, agreed. And that kind of goes into like when you're talking about like electrologists, like weird positioning and that kind of stuff, because insertion angle is a component here. When we talk about the angle of inclination of hair, it shifts a lot with the vellus hair. With peach fuzz, often electrologists they start inserting a little too steeply. Fine hairs, they're pretty superficial. They lay typically like a more horizontal to the horizon of the skin, right? So your skin being the horizon and the hair is laying flatter. So the insertion often needs to follow a very shallow angle that's aligned closely with the direction of the hair. Follow the hair, not the surface of the skin in this space.
Exactly. I mean, the skin surface can fool you. Look at the angle of the emergence of that hair and imagine the follicle path underneath. The longer that hair is, the more it actually changes the angle. or the perception of what the angle is, I should say, because what's under the skin is a different thing. The probe, as we know, should slide easily inside the follicle. We don't press into the skin. That slide feeling is pretty important.
Yeah, the glide, the slide, absolutely. If electrologists are feeling resistance, stop, reassess, pull back. Forcing the filament into the follicle is never the answer, especially on finer hairs. You're still going to get inflammation whether the current's going or not. And depth ends up being another big issue in here.
Very big. Peach fuzz does not usually require the same depth as a coarse hair. Actually, it does not in 99% of cases.
Literally.
So electrologists, I think, and that's probably the biggest issue with peach fuzz, that I think a lot of people over insert because you're just used to treating deeper follicles.
Yeah, I happen to like agree with my whole entire chest in that moment. And that can cause unnecessary tissue response to the patient.
Exactly. With fine, shallow hair, the treatment should match the follicle. The goal is not to bury the probe deeply. The goal is accurate placement and appropriate depth for that hair, which is going to be very shallow.
It's interesting that you say that because when I was teaching, when I was showing the multi-needle at your school for AES, everybody was like, wow, you're so deep in there. And I'm like, you actually have to like actively look for hydrated hairs when you are like, it has to be something that's a fatter, more noticeable. And when you start focusing in on them, I am going to depth on a deep set terminal hair in anagen phase that I can tell is supple in that space that has the moisture present in that. If I saw a lack of any of that vibrancy, like what's the point of going into that full depth in that space? And even then, that full depth is in response to that hair. We aren't talking about something that the full depth is essentially like an ITH 1 or 2 in those spaces, or too short in that spot. We have to focus that energy so superficially. So the depth should be based on a hair and not a habit. Because if I were to go off the habit of when I do multi on my patients versus when I do my peach fuzz clients, we are doing two very different treatments on those patients. So electrologists have to learn how to read the hair size, the direction, and the depth versus like treating every follicle as if it's the same. Going into probe size, it does make a difference.
I mean, probe size matters, but electrologists should not automatically reach for the smallest probe without thinking.
No.
Sometimes it actually doesn't help. The probe should fit in the follicle as closely as possible while still allowing a smooth insertion.
Absolutely. Too large could be trauma. Too small can not deliver the energy efficiently or where it even needs to be at all. Very tiny probes, like they might feel easier for insertion in this space, but they might always give the best treatment effect. A probe that is approximately matched to the follicle can help like improve energy delivery. It reduces the unnecessary treatment in that space. So when electrologists start thinking about energy with fine hair, we think about that high intensity, short duration in that space, but not so little that it is just being plucked in your timing, and not so intense that you're just cooking the skin to your filament itself in that point effect. Electrologists need to look for like a clean release with minimal traction, watch the skin response, and make sure that the endpoint is still there and present.
Yes, and the hair needs to release without plucking, but the skin should not show signs that the treatment is too aggressive for that area. So this is where electrologists may overtreat because you don't trust the release. You may be increasing the energy when the real issue is insertion accuracy. Poor visibility, they're hard to see, we know. Wrong angles, wrong depth, or just poor positioning.
Yeah. And the thing is like, when we start talking about like treatment rhythm, I always joke and say I have to have music in the background because it's a rhythm that I'm going to, right? In that same space. But we need to think about slowing ourselves down. Electrolysis is about accuracy, not speed. We are built for accuracy, not speed. Peach fuzz requires a precision that is unmatched. Electrologists need to avoid rushing from hair to hair. It's better to go in there and treat fewer hairs accurately than more hairs poorly in this space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is hard for electrologists because you want to be efficient. Of course, you want to be fast, but efficiency will come later. Accuracy needs to come first.
Yeah.
So on fine hair, rushing will often lead to missed insertions, surface irritation, and probably plucking, therefore leading to you having to retreat anyway.
Then that's the paradoxical hypertrichosis of the electrologist is like, we'll just go in there, bloop, 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 and
Yeah.
I'm like, you just did what laser did. Skin stretch is another important piece, a gentle, controlled stretch. And when I talk about gentle, your placement, like where you're stretching, is important. That when we are trying to manipulate a follicle, we have to think about, are we manipulating the follicle because we have chosen something out of like ease or accessibility? Controlled stretch, it helps stabilize the skin. It helps open the follicle slightly. It helps making the insertion easier, right? But a stretch should not distort the follicle path so that the electrologist like inserts at the wrong angle. So enough stretch to stabilize, but not so much the anatomy changes.
That's right.
Mhm.
So fine hair can be a more advanced type of technique just because the margin of error is very small. With that being said, if you're going to be practicing on this area, I would say just kind of go for it, but definitely slow down, pull back on the depth, and make sure that your lighting and your visibility is on point.
All right. So like before we finish up, let's talk about some practical checklists for electrologists. What are we doing?
So first, improve visibility before touching the skin. Adjust your lighting, your magnification, and your client positioning. That's going to be number one. Second, follow the hair's angle of emergence. Don't let the aerial part of the hair fool you. Sometimes it's kinked sideways because you slept funky or you had skinny jeans on or socks or whatever. So pay attention to the angle of emergence. Don't just insert straight down unless the follicle really truly calls for it. Third thing, use shallow depth when the hair is shallow. Don't treat a fine hair like you do a coarse terminal hair.
Absolutely. Fourth, okay, choose a filament that fits a follicle, not simply the smallest probe available in the space. Fifth, I would say use enough energy for a clean release, but not to compensate for a poor insertion by over-treating. Sixth, use a gentle skin stretch to stabilize the follicle without distorting it. And seventh, slow down. Precision matters more than speed.
And I would add one more. Know when to treat and when not to treat. If the hair's too fine to see it clearly, if the skin is reacting just way too much, or if the client's expectations are unrealistic, I would say pause and reassess.
That reminds me of the people that often think that it's problematic for them, but it's not like a hair problem.
Yeah.
And so reminding people like, hey, like there are times where it's not electrolysis is bad for you. In other areas, great. But this is not hair that is treatable, right? When you start talking about that, it's like, I really love the questions that we got from our friends down under, because they connect every day to our practice. And that is huge.
Yeah. The hair growth cycle helps us explain why treatment takes time. Follicle anatomy helps us understand why stage, depth, and treatment target matters. And peach fuzz remind us that even the smallest hairs can require a lot of skill and precision.
And just like us, not one size fits all.
No, and that's such an important point. So we cannot treat every hair, every follicle, every client, or every area the same way. Good electrolysis requires us to understand biology, to choose the right technique, to watch the skin response, and to communicate clearly with our clients.
Before we leave you, a few practical takeaways.
Explain hair growth cycles during the consultation before the client becomes discouraged.
Don't promise that 3 months means every follicle will be treated once. Okay. Use 8 to 12 weeks as a reassessment point, not a guarantee.
Separate clearance from completion. Clearing the visible hair is not the same thing as being finished.
Hair stage does matter, still matters, okay? Anagen is generally more favorable, but telogen hairs will still be affected when treatment is done accurately.
The bulge is important, but it's not the whole story. Follicle anatomy, insertion, energy, and skin response all matter.
Peach fuzz requires excellent visibility, shallower but accurate insertions, appropriate filament selection, and patience.
And finally, do not sacrifice skin safety in pursuit of a perfect clearance. We are treating follicles, but we're also protecting the skin.
Yes. Okay, so that was such a great Q&A because these questions are what clients are asking us. They're what electrologists are asking us all the time.
Especially when the client says, why am I still seeing hair? That question can feel very discouraging to them, but it gives us an opportunity to educate, to reassure, and to reset those expectations.
We want to thank Kelly Dermody of Dermaskin Training and the Australian Electrology Group for joining us tonight and sending us such thoughtful questions and for being part of this Q&A. So thank you, Kelly, for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Joanie and Steph. On behalf of the Australian Electrologists, I can't thank you enough for just helping us along with answering our questions and realizing we're all facing the same difficulties, challenges.
Yes.
Thank you so much. These are the kinds of conversations that help us grow as practitioners and educators. And thank you to everyone listening to Electrolysis Unplugged and After Hours Chat. We hope this episode gives you a better language for consultations, better confidence in explaining treatment timelines, and stronger practical tools for your treatment room.
So until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep raising the standard of electrology, no matter where on the globe you are.